Good morning. I'm glad to be here with you this morning to share the message. I'm really sort of surprised that I'm here, to be honest with you, because you may remember about a year ago I did my first sermon ever about this time of the year, and I must have done okay or I wouldn't be here this morning. So I hope to keep that, make that a trend. But we'll all find out here shortly. I am, as you know, the director of recovery at Ringgold, and this is our 10th anniversary, which is quite an accomplishment. Can I have an amen for that? Yeah. We have met roughly 624 times to help people get their life back on track. And, I pray that we have another 10 years. Before I go into the message, I want to reiterate a couple of events that are about to happen. This coming Thursday at 6:15, we have a special guest at Recovery at Ringgold, and that is a Dr. Gil Smith, and he happens to be my sponsor. And he's got quite a story to tell, and so I invite all of you to come this coming Thursday and hear him speak. And then, as has already been said, we have our real celebration for the anniversary on the 26th. And we have a special guest that night, and that'll be Chris McDaniel, who is formerly with the Confederate Railroad Band and has done a lot of work in the area of recovery. So, again, I hope you'll attend both those events. Because it's our 10th anniversary, Chris has asked me to talk about Step 10. Other than the number, I'm not exactly sure what the connection is, but if Chris asks, that's what I'll do, okay? So we're going to stick with that. I hope that I can deliver this message in a meaningful way to each of you so that you actually take something away. But listen carefully, because you may be tested on this later, right? Okay, in order to talk about Step 10, I need to put it in the context of the other 12 or 11 steps. And you might think, well, gosh, we're doing a lot of step stuff today. Why is it that important? Well, I'll tell you. It's because it's the only recovery program that I know of that actually works. It's got almost 100 years behind it, and it is the cornerstone of our program here and many, many others. So the 12, you really can't get enough of the 12 steps. As a whole, the 12 steps are about making positive changes in the way you live your life. And that makes a big difference for those who need to straighten that out a little bit. Yes, they were created for people with alcoholism and used for years with people that struggle with substance abuse. But I know for a fact that regardless of your issue, that the steps can be effective in making changes, regardless of what it is that you're dealing with. The steps are in a sequence for a reason. Each one builds upon the one that it precedes it, and the order is significant. Just a few minutes ago, during our greeting time, the passing the peace time, I'll bet 90% of those greetings included a question. And that question was probably, how are you? How you doing, right? And just as frequently, the answer was, I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. Well, the word fine as defined in the Advanced English Dictionary means being satisfactory or in satisfactory condition. Now that may be true for a few of us, but not for the majority of us. We are all struggling with something. Maybe it's an addiction, but if not, something else. Maybe you're dealing with aging parents, or you've got serious health problems, or too much short-term debt, okay? And or maybe a rebellious child. But any of 1,000 problems can be something you're dealing with that keeps you from living your life to its fullest. So in cases like that, saying I'm fine is really dodging the question. Of course, the person asking the question probably doesn't really want a truthful answer because they're too busy dealing with their own issues to take time for yours. So, but to some degree or another, all of us are in denial. Now, denial is a way of avoiding difficult issues. If you don't admit the issue, well, then you don't have to deal with it, right? So, these problems and these struggles keep you unbalanced, and they hurt you and the people you love. In order to live our lives to the fullest, we've got to get rid of them. We need to overcome their power over us, and the steps can help you do that. Don't think of the steps as being, just for people with substance abuse issues. I hope you'll open your thinking to realize that this is really something that can help you. Well, that brings us to step 1. All right? It reads, we admitted our powerlessness over our addictions and compulsive behaviors, that our lives had become unmanageable. Well, basically, before you can address a problem, you've got to admit it. You've got to come out of denial, and which is in a sense saying, I need help. After all, if it's a problem and has been for a long time, you would have solved it if you could. But if it's a persistent issue, we need to get out of our John Wayne mode, do it all myself, I don't need any help, nothing wrong with me, stick to your own business, and get in a mode of accepting some help. And of course, we've got to do that and acknowledge that we're not in control of our own issues, and trust God that He has the capability and the desire to do that. And that's where step 2 comes in. And step 2 reads, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Well, our higher power is Jesus Christ, right? He has what it takes to help us through anything. Okay? And He actually wants to. Now, step 3 reads, we made a decision to turn our life and will over to the care and loving concern of God, which means we're going to change the way we live our lives. We're going to live our lives based on His will, in His way. We say, Lord, I'm not getting it. Teach me. It's about getting out of the driver's seat. You remember that old Greyhound bus ad from years ago where mysteriously a driver fell through the air and into the bus and leave the driving to us, was the theme line? Well, we need to get out of that driver's seat because we took the bus into a place where we're lost and we need some help. We need a professional driver. And that, of course, is Jesus. So making that decision only requires a few seconds. But bringing it to reality will take the rest of our lives. Doing God's will is something that doesn't really come naturally for us. We like to do things our way. And unfortunately, our best thinking got us here. Okay? So it's time to try another way. If you abbreviate the first 3 steps, they are simply, I can't, he can, and I think I'll let him. So that's an easy way to remember them. Step 4 and 5 are about cleaning house. Have any of you moved from one house to another lately, downsizing, something like that? You know, did you unpack every box that you moved? Well, most of us don't. We leave a few unopened and unpacked because they're full of whatnots or stuff we don't think we'll need, and we put them aside and wait for a time when it's better to unpack those things. But sometimes that time never comes. And they sit there in the basement of your attic or your basement collecting dust. Well, step 4 is about opening and unpacking those boxes that are in the dark corners of your soul. It reads, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. So we write down all of the bad things we've ever done in as much detail as we can. But because it's an inventory, we also write down the good stuff. And if you happen to have more bad stuff than good stuff, you can write the good stuff down twice. Okay? So it's about cleaning up those unopened boxes. Step 5 bookends step 4. The 5th step is about getting rid of the garbage that we uncovered in step 4. And it reads, we confess to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Now, this is a very difficult step for most people. I mean, after all, these have been secrets for some time. And secrets have a power over you. They are things that you may be ashamed of or feel guilty about. And if you have a secret, it has power over you until you share it. And that's when it loses its power and you're free of it. Step 5 is like spring cleaning for our souls. Okay, you know, back in step 3, we invited God into our lives. And he deserves a clean place to stay. So ladies, let me ask you a question. What's the first thing you'd do if your husband announced that his parents were dropping by for a visit and leaving home is not an option? You'd start straightening up, wouldn't you? You'd clean up and put things away. If it's important to do that for your mother-in-law, how much more important do you think it is to do it for the creator of the universe when he drops by? Now, your mother-in-law may think she operates at God's level, but we know that's not true. Steps 4 and 5 help us get ready to make positive changes in the way we live our lives. 6 and 7 are about cleaning up the rest of our act. Seldom is it that we have just one issue or one problem. We usually come with more than that. And it reads, step 6 reads, we became willing to have God remove all our defects of character. And step 7 says, we humbly ask him to remove all our shortcomings. Now that sounds a lot alike, doesn't it? But it's different because of who's doing what. In step 6, we become ready. And in step 7, God does the work of removing those defects. We ask him humbly, but he does the work. And besides, if that was one step instead of 2, we'd have 11. And that would really foul everything up. Okay, so we need 12 for a lot of reasons. Step 8 and 9 are about the harm we have caused other people. And it reads, we made a list of all the persons we've harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. And 9 says, we make direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. And that finally brings us to step 10, which is supposed to be the subject of my talk. I need to make it seem so if I want to get invited back, okay? So at this point in our journey through the 12 steps, we've made a lot of progress. We're living our lives differently. We've changed the old ways. We're probably closer to God than we ever have been before. And since we've made such progress, we want to keep it. We don't want to lose that. We want to maintain that progress. Are any of you a gardener? Raise your hand if you have a garden or have ever had a garden. Okay, that's a good bit of you. What happens if you go off and leave that garden unattended for a period of time? The weeds take it over, right? If you want to have a good harvest, you've got to maintain your garden. And that also applies to our Christian walk. The old saying, use it or lose it, applies. Step 10 reads, we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. If you work step 10 every day, at night, before you go to sleep, you ask yourself, how did I do today? You know, was I a blessing to others? Did I injure someone inadvertently or even intentionally? So, you know, you check your inventory of the positive things you've changed in your life, and, you know, you take care of it right away. The next morning, you go apologize to someone that you may not have been cordial to. And you don't pack those things away in boxes again and put them in the shady places of your attic or basement. You keep it clean. And that can help you in your walk with Christ. To ask yourself that question on a regular basis. How am I doing? How am I doing in my faith? Well, I'm going to change direction just a little bit because I want to talk about faith for a minute. Actually, it's going to be about 8 minutes, but you're a captive audience, so I guess we're going to be okay with that. Don't confuse faith with religion. Okay, religion is an institution of people who have come together, who share a common system of belief. And they meet to give God the glory that He deserves and to do good works in His name. That's good. But faith is a personal relationship with the Lord. I don't know about you, but I think faith is way more important than religion. If we were fortunate when we began our relationship with the Lord, we had people there to help us, who shared their faith with us, and who helped us mature in our understanding of things spiritual. And if we didn't, we've probably got some catching up to do. I love analogies because an analogy helps people understand what it is I'm trying to say. And some of you, I can tell by your faces, you're still trying to figure that out. So an analogy that I see here is between developing your faith and building a fire. Okay, when you build a fire, you gather tinder. Tinder is small twigs and dry grass and anything that'll burn readily. And you wad that into a ball and you put it down where you want your fire and you light it in any of many ways. A simple match is probably best. I don't know if any of you have ever tried to light a fire with flint and steel. Simple match is easier. And you light that tinder and protect that flame. This little flame begins, and you protect it from the wind, and you maybe blow gently on it. And as it begins to grow, you add more twigs and eventually small sticks. But you're careful not to put too much on at any given time, because you could smother that fire and it would go out. So you keep adding fuel to the fire only as fast as the fire can accept it. And then you keep doing that, and pretty soon you've got a roaring blaze. It can burn anything that you put in it. And so it is with our faith. In the beginning, we protect it, we focus on it, we add new information and beliefs only as fast as we can absorb them, always feeding it like a fire until it burns brightly. But just like a campfire, if we become distracted or occupied with other things, that fire will die down and eventually go out, leaving only smoldering coals. And so it is with our faith. We've got to keep feeding it, or it will die down and go out. Step 10 is an excellent way to make sure you're keeping an eye on your faith. When you see the flames dying down, it's time to add more fuel. Bring it back to a blaze. Step 10 is also a way to measure what your faith is accomplishing. The Lord gave us 2 commands and 1 commission. In Matthew 22, 37 to 39, God commands us to, quote, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love our neighbor as ourselves. A few chapters later in Matthew, specifically 28, verses 18 to 20, it says, then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teach them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I will always be with you, even to the end of the age. Now, wouldn't you agree that if the Creator of the universe commands us to do something, we probably best get about it, right? It's important. Using step 10 is a good way to maintain our focus on our faith. And it's our faith that will allow us to fulfill those commandments, right? Besides the great commandments in the Great Commission, there's more. Remember, back in step 3, we made a decision to turn our life and will over to the care and loving concern of God. In order to do that, we need to know what God's will for us is. Now, when I went through the steps the first time, I got to step 3 and my faith was burning brightly. I was all about it. If God had said, go to Zimbabwe, I'd have bought the ticket. Okay, I was ready to do whatever He wanted me to do, but I didn't get a telegram. There was no writing on the wall or visions in my dreams. Instead, He gave me time to get to know Him. Now, have you ever noticed when you know someone really well, you can predict what they feel about any given subject, or what they'd say in reaction to anything in particular? You see, you do that because you know the person. It happens because you know the person. And in my case, then, I'd just been introduced to him, and I didn't really speak his language yet. It was like getting a telemarketing call from some dude with a turban in India. I didn't understand him. I couldn't make sense out of it. But the more time I spent with him, I began to to hear him. I began to speak his language. So I'll bet every husband in here knows exactly how your wife would react to any given situation. Now, you'd think that'd keep us from doing some things that cause an uproar, but it doesn't seem to work that way. Why is that true? It's because you know them. It's because you spent time with them. It's because you listened to them and you've talked to them and you've got a connection to them. Well, that's how you get to know the Lord too, the same way. Spending time with him, talking to him, listening to what he says, and getting a connection with him. And when you get that connection, you'll know what his will for you is. And that's where step 11 comes in. It reads, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry it out. And then to address the Great Commission of making disciples, step 12 reads, having had a spiritual experience as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others and practice these principles in all our affairs. Now, you may have thought about the 12 steps as being something that really wasn't in your world, didn't need to be. But if you think about it, you're familiar with all of these things. And it's really a question of are you going to apply them or not? This all comes back to your faith. If life has elbowed its way in, if working long hours and soccer game schedules have diverted your attention and time, maybe an addiction has forced you into a ditch, bringing your focus back to your fire of faith is something you need to do. Sometimes all you've got to do is toss a few dry sticks onto those smoldering coals. And before you know it, your fire of faith is blazing again. Take a Sunday school class, a Bible study, begin a new devotional, have some meditation time. There are many, many ways to put that material on your fire of faith. If you make that your first priority, then everything else will fall into place. It doesn't happen by itself. You've got to do the work. But if you do the work, God will surely bless it. Well, what do you think? Did I get the job done? Yeah? Thank you. Thank you for listening.